There is a window of time after every meal, roughly 30 to 90 minutes, when your blood sugar either rises gradually and settles smoothly, or spikes sharply, crashes and leaves you tired, craving sugar, and fighting your own body for the rest of the afternoon. Most people have no idea this window exists, and almost no one knows that what you chew for 30 seconds at the end of a meal can meaningfully change what happens inside that window. This is not folk medicine or wellness trend content. There is a specific physiological mechanism behind why certain things chewed after meals influence blood sugar response, digestion efficiency, and post-meal cravings, and today we are going to go through exactly how it works. What is actually happening after a meal? To understand why this matters, you need to understand what your body is doing in the 60 to 90 minutes after you eat. When carbohydrates enter the digestive system, they are broken down into glucose and absorbed into the bloodstream. Blood sugar rises. The pancreas detects this and releases insulin, the hormone that signals cells to absorb glucose from the blood. When this process works correctly, blood sugar rises moderately, insulin responds proportionately, glucose is absorbed into cells for energy, and blood sugar returns to baseline. The problem is not the rise in blood sugar itself. The problem is the speed and magnitude of that rise. When carbohydrates are digested too rapidly, from foods that break down quickly, from eating too fast, or from digestive conditions that accelerate absorption, blood sugar spikes sharply above the normal range. The pancreas responds with a proportionally large insulin surge. That large insulin release often overshoots, pulling blood sugar down below baseline into what is called reactive hypoglycemia. The result: fatigue, brain fog, irritability, and an intense craving for sugar, not because you are weak-willed, but because your brain is detecting low blood sugar and demanding fast fuel. This is a physiological response, not a behavioral one. When this happens repeatedly, after breakfast, lunch, and dinner, day after day, cells begin losing sensitivity to insulin signal. They require more and more insulin to respond. This is the beginning of insulin resistance, which over time drives weight gain concentrated around the abdomen, increased hunger throughout the day, difficulty losing weight, and if it continues, prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. The post-meal window is where this entire cascade either happens or does not. And what you chew in the final minutes of a meal has a measurable effect on which direction it goes. Why chewing itself is part of the mechanism. Before getting to the specific seeds, this point deserves its own explanation because it is the part most people find most surprising. Digestion does not begin in the stomach. It begins in the mouth. Chewing triggers a cascade of physiological responses that prepare the entire digestive system for what is coming. Saliva production increases, releasing amylase, the enzyme that begins breaking down carbohydrates before they ever reach the stomach. Gastric acid secretion begins. Digestive enzymes in the small intestine are primed. The enteric nervous system, sometimes called the second brain, running the length of the digestive tract, activates. When chewing is rushed or minimal, this preparatory cascade is incomplete. Food arrives in the stomach before the system is ready. Digestion is less efficient. Nutrient absorption is less gradual, and glucose is released into the bloodstream more rapidly as a result. Chewing slowly and deliberately for even 30 seconds after the end of a meal, on something that maintains saliva production and gentle mechanical stimulation, extends this preparatory and digestive activation. The parasympathetic nervous system, which governs the rest and digest state, remains engaged rather than shifting prematurely toward the alert, post-meal state where cravings and restlessness emerge. This means that some portion of what chewing specific seeds after meals achieves is simply the act of chewing itself, continued beyond the meal. The seeds amplify this effect through their own bioactive compounds, but the chewing mechanism is real and independent. Cumin seeds, the mechanism behind the tradition. Cumin seeds have been used after meals in South Asian, Middle Eastern, and North African cuisines for centuries. not as a supplement, as a digestive practice embedded in food culture. The fact that this tradition persisted across unconnected cultures over long periods is itself meaningful. It reflects observed benefit rather than theoretical one. The bioactive compound primarily responsible for cumin's metabolic effects is cuminaldehyde, the compound that gives cumin its distinctive aroma and flavor. Cuminaldehyde has been studied for its effects on digestive enzyme activity and glucose metabolism. Here is what the research shows specifically. A study published in the journal Nutrition Research found that cumin supplementation in adults with overweight and metabolic risk factors significantly reduced fasting blood sugar, insulin levels, and glycated hemoglobin, the 3-month blood sugar average used to diagnose prediabetes and diabetes, over 8 weeks. The proposed mechanism was improved pancreatic beta cell function and enhanced insulin receptor sensitivity. A second mechanism involves digestive enzyme stimulation. Cumin has been shown to increase the activity of pancreatic lipase, amylase, and protease, the 3 primary digestive enzymes responsible for breaking down fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. When these enzymes are more active, food is digested more completely, and nutrients are absorbed more gradually, rather than in a rapid bolus. This directly slows glucose entry into the bloodstream. Cumin also contains significant levels of flavonoids, plant antioxidant compounds that reduce oxidative stress after meals. Post-meal oxidative stress, the spike in free radical activity that follows a large glucose entry into the bloodstream, is one of the mechanisms by which repeated glucose spikes damage the endothelium, the inner lining of blood vessels. Reducing this oxidative stress is part of how cumin's regular use may contribute to long-term vascular protection. Additionally, cumin has mild carminative properties. It reduces gas production and intestinal spasm, which is part of why it has been used for bloating and digestive discomfort across cultures. This effect is distinct from the blood sugar mechanism, but contributes to the general improvement in post-meal comfort that many people notice. How to use it. 5 to 10 whole cumin seeds, chewed slowly for 30 to 60 seconds immediately after finishing a meal. The chewing releases the volatile oils that carry cuminaldehyde into contact with both the salivary enzymes and the taste receptors that signal downstream digestive activation. Ground cumin added to food provides the bioactive compounds but loses the chewing mechanism. Both forms have value, but they work through different pathways. Fennel seeds, the gentler alternative. Fennel seeds are the most practical alternative for people who find cumin's earthy, slightly bitter flavor difficult to maintain as a daily habit. The bioactive compounds in fennel seeds, primarily anethole, the compound responsible for their characteristic mild anise flavor, work through a similar but not identical mechanism. Anethole has demonstrated anti-inflammatory and antispasmodic effects on the digestive tract. Fennel seeds stimulate bile secretion, which improves fat digestion and slows gastric emptying, the rate at which food leaves the stomach and enters the small intestine. Slower gastric emptying is directly correlated with slower glucose absorption and a flatter post-meal blood sugar curve. Fennel is also one of the most effective natural carminatives available. It specifically reduces intestinal gas and bloating through relaxation of smooth muscle in the digestive tract. For people who experience significant bloating, heaviness, or discomfort after meals, fennel seeds often provide more immediate noticeable relief than cumin. Research published in the International Journal of Food Sciences found that fennel extract significantly reduced postprandial blood glucose levels in animal models, with the proposed mechanism involving alpha amylase inhibition, slowing the enzyme that breaks carbohydrates into simple sugars, thereby reducing the speed of glucose absorption. Fennel seeds also have a mild natural sweetness and leave a fresh quality in the mouth, which directly addresses the psychological component of post-meal sweet cravings. The mild sweet flavor satisfies the sensory expectation of something sweet without providing any glycemic load. How to use it. 5 to 10 fennel seeds chewed slowly for 30 to 60 seconds after meals. Fennel seeds are safe for daily use and have a significantly milder flavor profile than cumin, making habit formation easier for many people. Two additional options worth knowing about for their different mechanisms. Cardamom seeds or pods. Cardamom contains 1,8-cineol and other volatile compounds that have demonstrated blood sugar lowering properties in research. A study published in the Journal of Medicinal Food found that cardamom supplementation significantly reduced fasting blood glucose and improved antioxidant status over 12 weeks in adults with prediabetes. Cardamom also has the most pleasant flavor profile of the seeds discussed here, mildly sweet, aromatic, and warming, which makes it the easiest to sustain as a daily habit. It also provides meaningful antimicrobial protection in the mouth, supporting oral microbiome health. Cinnamon. While typically used in cooking rather than chewed directly, a small piece of Ceylon cinnamon chewed after meals provides polyphenols that mimic insulin action at the cellular receptor level. Research consistently shows that 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon daily of Ceylon cinnamon, not cassia cinnamon, which contains compounds that are hard on the liver in daily amounts, reduces post-meal blood sugar response measurably. For people who prefer something slightly sweet, a small piece of cinnamon stick chewed after meals is an effective post-meal habit. Why timing matters. Immediately after the meal. The timing of these habits is specific and worth understanding. The post-meal window in which glucose is actively being absorbed peaks between 30 and 90 minutes after eating. The digestive enzyme stimulation and parasympathetic activation that chewing produces has its strongest effect when it occurs at or immediately after the end of the meal, when the stomach is still processing food and the small intestine is beginning glucose absorption. Chewing these seeds an hour after a meal, when blood sugar has already peaked, provides far less benefit than chewing them in the final minutes of eating or immediately after finishing. The habit works best when it is embedded at the end of the meal as a natural conclusion, not treated as a supplement taken later. This is worth stating clearly to calibrate expectations honestly. Chewing cumin, fennel, cardamom, or cinnamon after meals does not cancel the glycemic impact of a high-carbohydrate meal. A meal of white bread, pasta, rice, or sweet desserts will still produce a significant glucose response. These habits smooth and moderate that response. They do not eliminate it. For people whose post-meal symptoms are driven primarily by dietary composition, very high glycemic load meals eaten quickly without adequate protein, fat, or fiber, addressing the meal itself will produce far more significant changes than any post-meal chewing habit. These habits work most effectively as a complement to a diet that is already reasonably balanced, where the primary driver of post-meal discomfort is moderate rather than extreme glucose response, and where a 15 to 25% reduction in the speed of absorption meaningfully changes how the afternoon feels. For people with diagnosed diabetes or prediabetes using medication, these habits are safe and complementary, but they should not be treated as an alternative to medical management. Consult your healthcare provider about how these practices fit into your overall blood sugar management plan. People who regularly feel tired or foggy in the 60 to 90 minutes after meals. People who experience strong cravings for something sweet after eating, despite having eaten a complete meal. People who notice bloating, heaviness, or digestive discomfort after meals. People managing weight, particularly abdominal weight accumulation. People with prediabetes or insulin resistance working to improve post-meal glucose response through lifestyle and dietary means. The simplest implementation. Keep a small container of cumin or fennel seeds on the dining table. At the end of each meal, take 5 to 10 seeds, place them in your mouth, and chew slowly for 30 to 60 seconds before swallowing. That is the complete practice. For people who find whole seeds difficult to source or maintain, a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cumin or cardamom, stirred into a small amount of warm water and drunk immediately after a meal, provides most of the bioactive benefit without the chewing mechanism. For people who want the chewing mechanism with the most pleasant flavor, fennel seeds or cardamom pods are the most sustainable daily options for most palates. Give it 2 to 3 weeks of consistent practice before evaluating whether you notice changes in post-meal energy, cravings, or digestive comfort. The digestive enzyme stimulation effects are relatively rapid, often noticeable within the first week. The blood sugar modulation effects build gradually and become more consistent over time. If this gives you a clearer understanding of what is actually happening in your body after meals and why a simple 30-second habit can influence that process, share it with someone who struggles with post-meal fatigue or sweet cravings. Subscribe for more evidence-based health content that explains the mechanisms behind everyday habits, not just what to do, but why it works. We will see you in the next one.